You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. I'm your host, Eden, and I'm so excited to offer you this bonus series called the CBRDBR series. This side series is a forum for us to meet interesting guests with unique perspectives and gifts discovered from lived experiences that are both practical and woo. Let's dive in. On this episode of the CBRDBR series, I'd like to introduce you to Amy Stein. Amy works with women who carry the highly sensitive trait and assists them with reconnecting to the innate intelligence of their bodies using the medicine of Mother Nature as a guide. Amy's philosophy is that when we awaken to our inner light, we can sync the mind with the body and the spirit. She combines the power of the plants along with energy medicine and breath work to allow women to live in harmony in their bodies and environments. Amy reminds women that they get to choose what is best for their life through the activation and reawakening of their intuition and self-connection. Hi, Amy. How are you today?
Hey, Eden, I'm excited to be here with you.
I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to the CBRDBR series, hosted on the Practical and Woo podcast. Woohoo! I am so excited to jump into your journey of energy healing, how you overcame your own autoimmune disorder, as well as the plant medicine, cycle syncing, and breath work that you help lead women through so that they can get in touch with their bodies and their rhythms and all of that. It's all so juicy. I'm so excited. So why don't you go ahead and dive in and let us know how you came to be where we are in this moment right now.
So it was a long journey. I'm just going to start it right there. It was a very long journey. So where I'm at now I'm connected to my body, I'm connected to the inner wisdom of my body. I was not there at all. So, like everyone else growing up in Western society, there's no ritual, there's no idea of trusting intuition, right? It's all about you have to see it to believe it. And so because you can't see your intuition, it doesn't exist. It's not real. Oh, we don't trust that, right? We're all in the mind, it's all logical. And so that was how I lived my life, but it was very out of alignment because ever since I was a little kid, I was feeling all these things that I couldn't explain, right? I would try to tell my parents, oh, I don't like this, but I can't tell you why I don't like this food. I don't like this clothing. I don't like to be around this person, right? So I was labeled difficult. I was labeled too sensitive. I was labeled, I just wanted to get out of things. I was a troublemaker, right? Because I was always advocating for myself, but I was not seen, heard, or believed. And this idea of feeling disconnected to my body was something that kept getting louder the older I got because my body was trying to give me messages to bring me back into alignment. But because society does not teach us to do that, we're taught the body is broken, right? The messages are not correct. There's symptoms, take a pill and it will get better. And so, I grew up in that mentality and I went along that track and it didn't get better. And is actually got worse as I got older because I was so disconnected from what my body was trying to tell me. And at that point, I didn't know that the body was designed to heal. I didn't know that the body was designed to bring us back into balance. I just thought I was broken, that there was something wrong with me. And that was the messaging that was reaffirmed to me by the doctors, oh, it's all in your head. You're crazy. There's nothing on your labs, right? And so when I was then working with chronic pain patients who were geriatrics, 60s and 70s, I was in my mid 20s and I began to resemble my patients. And I was like, what is going on here? This is crazy. And so it was a really coming home experience because I had been advocating for them because they were not seen, heard, or believed. And then I had to advocate for myself with these same doctors who I'd worked with for years. So I wasn't like a faceless patient. I was someone that they knew and it was failing me. Western medicine was failing me. And it was a really hard journey to get where I am today. But I can say that the person I am today, I like a lot better than the person I was at 25.
Oh, I
Right.
love that. There is so much there. I heard you say that your body is designed to heal. Your body is designed for wellness. I heard you say that your body was reflecting the mentality of your patients and actually producing physical symptoms. All of this Juicy wisdom. Oh my goodness. That is such an empowering stance. And it's so true. And yes, I agree that our society is framed that you have to see it in order to believe it, where the way the scientific methodology is framed is, well, science says so. But the thing about science is it's an ever expanding, growing, changing field based upon theorem. And the process of collecting evidence, the process of experimentation, the process of creating hypothesis, which is innately curious. And
Right.
so believing it, as in, I believe this, so I am therefore creating a hypothesis to test this in my reality. To see it is, I think, actually a more appropriate framework for all of it,
Mhm.
incredibly less rigid, more
Right.
creative. I would love to know more about how you connecting to your body led you to feeling empowered and fulfilled within yourself, and how it led you to your mission to help women harmonize with their environments and themselves.
Yeah, so again, disclaimer, it did not happen overnight, right? Like healing is hard. It's a long journey. There is no magic wand, there's no magic protocol, no magic pill, right? So everybody wants that, but it doesn't exist. So it took me a long time. It took me about 10 years to be in this process of actually trusting that my body was designed to heal, because it's not a messaging that is taught to us. It's something you have to uncover on your own. It's when you reconnect back to that inner wisdom that we all have within us, right? But we're just not taught about it. And we're taught not to trust that. But there's phrases of gut instinct, trust your gut, like that have been around for a long time. And so modern day medicine is based upon traditional medicines from 5,000 years ago, but it's not something that's actually taught anymore. So Ayurveda, traditional plant medicine using the indigenous tools and techniques, also traditional Chinese medicine, I Ching, like there's so many different varieties, right? Like, so they were doing acupuncture 3,000 years ago, found meridians. Modern day science is only catching up to that now. So when we're not taught that, we don't know. And so for me, I was desperate to know something because traditional Western medicine was not helping me. So I went off and deviated. I was the rebel who was like, I'm firing all the doctors and I'm going to take my power back. Right. And so people thought I was crazy. Like my family, my friends were like, what are you doing? But there was something inside of me that I had ignored for too long that I was finally beginning to listen to the whispers. This is not the way to do it, right? Like there's another way. And that was how I embarked on reconnecting back to Mother Nature through plant medicine and studying her cycles and the wisdom that she has, that she exhibits, right? So she exhibits resiliency. No matter how much we pollute her and abuse her, she's still resilient. She still keeps going. She survived us before, she will survive us after. Like, as much as we pollute and damage her, she will still be resilient. And so when we can lead from her example, when we can trust what she is doing and implement that into our own lives, we reconnect to the innate wisdom that's in us, but also within Mother Nature, right? So I begin to understand that all these plants around me that I had propagated had medicinal properties, but the properties of the plants that were the strongest were the things we call weeds, right? So everybody's all wants green grass, they want to kill their weeds. You can't eat the grass, but a lot of the weeds that are growing are there to support you personally. The weeds that are in your yard are there personally to support you with the ailments that you have, with the messages your body's trying to get you back into balance. Because the body recognizes plants because it's not diluted with chemicals, it's not filled with toxins. It's real medicine, it's alive, it has an energy life force to it, where a pharmaceutical does not, right? An injection does not. There's nothing there. It was created in a lab, it's artificial. So when I began to use the power of the plants, the plant medicine, began to make my own tinctures, my own infused oils, began to eat my weeds, I could see that there were changes happening in my body that were making me understand more about the wisdom that already existed within me, right? So then I could understand that even if I couldn't see it, didn't mean it wasn't there. And that was how I then ventured into energy medicine of like, oh, what is this idea of everything is energy, right? Like, I don't understand that because I can't always see it all. But I can understand that the desk you and I are sitting at, right, is solid, but it's really energy. You and I are energy, right? So you can't create it or destroy it, but you can change it. And you can change that with your behavior, with your actions, right? With the way you perceive. It's a process of unlearning, I say a lot of the time. Rather than a process of learning, we've learned so much that is really not useful in school. I'm just gonna say that. Like, sorry if that offends anybody, but there's a lot of things that you're taught in school that is actually not helpful when you get out into the real world. There is no nutritional training. There is no coping skills training, right? There is no understanding how your body works, understanding the connection to Mother Earth, right? It's all about technology, being on the computer, being on the phone, being on the laptop, right? Understanding these archaic ideas that in real life you're not going to use. So for me, it was a process of unlearning all of that and learning what my body needed me to learn, right? What did I need to learn in order to heal? And so a lot of that was changing my beliefs, changing the programming that I inherited, changing, the ideas that I had that were passed upon me as, I inherited them. Doesn't mean I came to my own opinion on them. It was something that was just, this is what's good, this is what's bad, right? This is what's right, this is what's wrong. It's very dualistic, very black and white. There is no gray. And with healing, there's a lot of gray, a lot of gray.
That is so powerful. Oh my goodness. I just want to give a disclaimer to the audience that we are by no means inviting you to quit all doctors. It's a matter of opening your mind to do both. If you 100% feel that's your path, then that is your every right to do. And I am of the mindset that it all is valuable, that the open-minded approach is the one that I like to personally take. And I love that you are using plant medicine. I love that, or even homeopathy. And in fact,
Yeah,
a lot of the pharmaceuticals actually take the chemical compounds of these plants and turn them into artificial structures that then are the things that we take as medicine. And so, okay, why are they turning to the plants in order to find the
mm,
compounds that do the things? Like there's something to that
right.
that I think is very, very interesting.
Right,
Um
they manipulate it so then they can make money off of it. 'Cause they can't make money off of it if you go and eat your weeds in your backyard, right? Like, they can't make money off of that, right?
the way that I think of it is almost like an inauthentic person who's trying to
Yeah,
copy the power of someone truly
yeah,
authentic, right? It's kind of cool, but going to see a doctor for a lot of people, if you're tapped into the matrix, right? It's not an overnight shift where it's like now I'm
right,
suddenly committed only to holistic healing or plant healing. That might happen to someone, but I just want to make sure that people know that there's a process and a journey. If you have a cold and you want to seek
right.
support from anyone you desire to seek support from, and that's really important. And I love what you are sharing about being able to eat your weeds. I thought that was so incredibly quippy. Oh no, I think I'm losing you. Oh, there you are. You're back. Are you back?
Good. I am, yeah, I'm
Okay,
here,
yeah,
I'm
there.
here.
Okay, you're
Can you hear me?
perfect. Okay.
Okay,
A little tech hiccups sometimes happen in these calls. Ah, bear with me. And I plan on posting it for the most part if I can, just like the authentic conversation
yeah,
and no edits. I loved what you said about being able to eat your weeds, and that leads to a curiosity of what kinds of plants did you find had the most effect on your personal experience? I know dandelion root is a really
mhm,
important one in particular. Um, but yeah, I'm curious to know, what do you grow? How do you use it? How did it have an effect or positive impact on your autoimmune experience,
right.
and all of that?
So it's important to note that this is not like an all allopathic. So when we do herbalism, the way that herbalism was designed, it's not like allopathic medicine, right? Which is Western medicine. That I have a headache, I take this pill, right? I have a headache, I take this plant. So I'm all about you get to choose what's best for you. For me, myself, Western medicine failed me with chronic pain and chronic disease. And I've noticed that with other people. But if my husband cuts his arm off, right? Like, I'm not going to try to fix him with a tincture. Like, I'm going to send him to the ER and then they can, for emergency medicine, I'm going to send him to the ER. I'm going to trust the doctor has the training, right? But doctors don't have traditional training with nutrition. They don't know about plants. They don't treat the body as a whole. So a lot of things when you have chronic disease and autoimmune gets missed if you're not looking at the whole picture. Again, if we're treating the body like parts, which it's not. And if you're not respecting the innate intelligence. So the way that I learned herbalism was the way that you get to know the plants because they're all unique, just like we're all unique, right? You get to choose what's best for you is a big motto I have of my, with everything I do, right? So I would never sit here and say, these are the 1,001 things I did, because I wouldn't remember all of them anyway, because it's 10 years, right? 15 years. And then tell you to do with those 1,001 things in the exact same order I did it. It's not going to make sense. It's not what's true for you. So there's things that I might have done that may be good suggestions for everybody, right? Like to eliminate toxins, to eat more food that has a live energy in it, right? Like not from a box or a bag, to eat out less because they don't use high quality food when you go out to eat, right? Unless you're going to somewhere that's pasture raised animal products. But the way the plants work and the way our bodies work is we all have different constitutions. We all have different needs and experiences that have created the bodies that we're in and the conditions that we all have, right? So if I were to say to you, "Oh, Eden, you have a headache, go drink peppermint tea," that might not work for you because your body may already be cold and dry or cold and wet. And so if I then tell you to go drink peppermint tea, you might not get rid of your headache. You're going to think the plant medicine doesn't work, right? So I don't want that to happen. So the way I explain it to people is you need to understand how your body is designed and you want to bring it back into balance. So if you're cold and dry all the time, or if you're cold and swollen all the time, that means that you have like a damp constitution, right? Like you don't have fluid moving properly. So you want to then have drying, heating, warming herbs to rebalance you back. So it's working with the body rather than against it. So each plant has its own constitution and its own affiliation to the planet. So there's also like an astrology component as well. So yeah, so when you can understand how the plant responds, you get to know each plant intimately. So the herbalist I studied with, he says you start out, you study 10 plants. That's it. There's like thousands of plants you could study, right? Just between where you and I live, there could be 15 different plants growing in my backyard and growing in your backyard that are completely different because we live in different areas of the world, right? But so you get intimate knowledge with each of these plants and you taste it, you spend time around it. What happens is it's going to sound a little strange, but like the plants will start to speak to you. It'll say like, use me for this. Use me for this condition. This condition, this plant is great for this situation you have going on. So that's what happened for me is that the more I began to spend time and respecting the intelligence of the plants rather than just what they could do for me, but to understand exactly how they were designed in relation to how my body was designed and how they could work with my body to bring it back into balance, that's when it works, right? It's not like, oh, take this for that. It's not that. This doesn't work that way with anything, right? But people want a quick fix. And they're, like I've said before, healing is hard. There is no quick fix. But when you can understand the message your body is giving you, that's when you can understand what's working and what isn't.
Hmm.
And it changes. Like again, because as you heal, your body is going to rebalance, it's going to change. So it's being curious, like you said, it's about being curious rather than having judgment or shame around what's coming up. It's being curious about it. How can I look at this in a different way, right? How can I unlearn? How can I see a different perspective from this? How can I support my body rather than my body is broken, my body is not doing what I want it to do, right? Rather than trying to beat it into submission to respond to what it's telling you, because it's not trying to be difficult. It is trying to help you. It's just we don't understand what it's saying. And so I've included as a free gift this journal with 3 daily prompts that it will get you back in contact with your body. Like, oh, what is my body trying to tell me today? What is this about? So you can explore that throughout the journal and get into contact with your body in a way that is on your own terms, right? Without anyone looking over your shoulder, without judgment or expectation, just what's coming up, just this awareness. It's practicing an awareness around it.
Oh, I love the way you speak about this. It is so potent. Your speaking is offering medicine in the way that the plants that you use offer medicine as well. I think that is just beautiful artistry. Just so all of our listeners are aware, Amy's wonderful gift is going to be included in the show notes. So if you are interested in this primary way to start tapping into the intuitive intelligence of your body or establishing this relationship with your body through Amy's beautiful journal, you can find it in the show notes with a handy link that I will make sure is there for you. And if it's not, then let me know, because then I'll make sure that it's there. I love the way that you speak about this, and that was going to be my next inquiry or my next curiosity with you is how would one, in your opinion, get started with this co-collaborative relationship with both plants as well as their bodies, right? To tap into their intuition more fully. And
Mm-hmm.
do you have more to say on intuition enhancement? Because I would
Yeah.
love to hear your robust perspective on it.
Exceeded? I feel flattered. So, yeah, I mean, for me, to plant medicine was part of the journey, right? But energy medicine is also a huge part. And plant medicine, as you said, homeopathic can be considered plant medicine, but also can be considered energy medicine. So there's a crossover effect. But for me, energy medicine, I really got to understand it when I began to understand the idea that surrender is not a dirty word, right? That this idea, because we're taught that surrender means to give up, to quit, right? And that, I was raised not to be a quitter. We don't quit. So I thought, I don't know what surrender means. I don't have a, a good idea of what that means. I don't have a spiritual idea. I was not raised religious. Like I don't understand what that means. And so what somebody close to me said to me, it's what if it isn't asking for help rather than quitting? It's just asking for help from something bigger than you. And I was like, oh, maybe I could get around that, right? So it's this idea of, again, just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the healing a lot of the times you can feel really isolated. You can feel really alone. It's really scary, especially if no one's listening to you, right? And you feel like, I don't know what to do, really uncertain. So when you have this connection to a higher power, that can be your intuition. That can be your inner knowing. That could be God. It could be the universe, source, spirit, the archangels, whatever you feel called to, right? So for me, it's Mother Nature. So I'll be like, hey, Mother Gaia, what's going on today? Like, what do I need to do to bring myself back into balance, right? So that is, I use more plants. I'll brew a different type of tea. Created unique bombs. I'll use one of my bombs to help with pain. Again, because the healing journey is never over. It's a lifelong journey. As long as I'm in this physical body, I will be learning or unlearning something because that's what my soul signed up for, right? So it's taking this responsibility to do the work. It doesn't always feel good and it's definitely not easy, but when we do the work and we reconnect back to the wisdom of the body, life seems easier in some ways. When you surrender to something that's bigger than you, right? You have something to ask for help. You have someone to rely on, to lean on to. So rather than worry about the how so much, we're all consumed about how is this going to happen? What's it going to look like? How am I going to do that, right? To just be open to the present moment. So the suggestions I always have that are, for everybody, regardless if you're having any sort of chronic disease or illness, is to bring you back to the present moment, right? So for me, that's breath. My feet are on the floor. I can take 5 deep breaths because in our society, we hold our breath or we breathe very shallow. So we don't actually take full breaths in. So within 5 deep breaths, you'll feel a difference. It'll be like, wow, what's that? That's the wisdom of your body, but you don't always experience it. So just having that time, taking the time to go outside every day, right? So this morning, the rain hadn't moved in. So I went outside. I was checking on my seeds. I was talking to Mother Gaia. I'm like, hey, what's going on today? Do I need to water? You're going to rain? I'm not sure, right? So it's having this connection, but it's also bringing back that playfulness, that curiosity of what could be. How could this be different? How could this look different? Right. And so I'm also all about quieting the noise, right? So I don't really have a lot of noise. When my husband's not home, there's not a lot of noise in my house because I can't handle it. So like I'll listen to some trainings, but then it's too much, right? So I need to turn it off. And so we're always 24/7 surrounded by noise, whether that's the noise around you, right, in your environment. If you have the TV on, the news on, your phone is always on, you're getting notifications, your text messages are going off, the emails keep dinging, right? Like turn some of the noise down and feel what that feels like. It's not as stimulating. You're not like on the edge of your seat all the time, right? Because your body does not know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So you're living in this like stressful time all the time. You're on the screens 24/7, which is not good for the brain. It's also not good for the body. And so it creates this additional level of stress in the body. It creates a different level of stress throughout the whole system. So it doesn't just affect the nervous system, it affects all of the systems. It affects your GI system, it affects, your visuals, it affects your senses. And so when we can tone down the noise, then we can begin to tone down the noise that's internal, our
Mm.
thoughts, our beliefs, right? The shoulds, the judgments, the expectations. It's all about the small steps. Like however you want to start wherever feels good to you, start wherever your biggest issue is, right? And just take those small steps to not overwhelm the system and to not overwhelm yourself.
Wow. I love that advice about doing something external in order to then understand what that feels like on an external
Mhm.
level and then to be able to bring it internal. I think that is so cool. I love that. Oh my goodness. I also acknowledge and I'm hearing that the healing journey isn't hard and I want to bring to conversation that that is for a reason.
Mhm.
We are on this earth having a human experience, playing with the amenities given to us with our five physical senses. And the challenges or the obstacles or the pain or the strenuous nature of living in a human experience is to offer that full access to all of the amenities in a way that allows you to feel so excited, celebratory, proud of yourself, because you really do appreciate if you are suffering with autoimmune, for example, and you discover something that works for you, the health that you then are tapped into feels so much more fulfilling than
Mhm.
if you just were status quo the whole time. It's these ebbs and flows that and the cycles. And I want to definitely get into your connection to lunar magic
Mhm.
and cycle tracking as well. I think that that is an exciting topic too. But it's these cycles that give us this wisdom, whether it's
Mhm.
body wisdom, whether it's experiential wisdom, whether it's relational wisdom, that allows us to feel like we're actually playing fully in the playground of the universe. And I think that that's really cool. What do you have to say about all of that, Jazz?
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like when you feel better, you do better, right? And so we all have unique gifts to share. We all take this time in the world to come to share our gifts, right? It's a little hard. There's a lot of chaos, right? But we all chose this time for a reason. Our souls all had lessons to learn, and we chose this time to come to make it really juicy. And so when you feel better, you can share your gifts, right? So I'm at the place now that I feel better. Doesn't mean I don't have flares. Like I'm in a flare right now. Like I haven't been feeling good the last few weeks, right? But rather than criticizing myself of what I did or didn't do or shaming myself, I can just be with it and know that there's a lesson here that I need to learn. There's something that's coming up for a reason, right? I couldn't have done that 5 years ago. I couldn't have definitely not have done that 15 years ago, right? I was like shame my body, pollute my body, punish my body, right? So this idea of being in a place now that I can share my gifts so that other people don't feel so alone, that other people know that there are other options, right? Like you don't just have to take option A. There's option A through Z. You just have to explore those which one is best for you. And you get to choose whatever that may be, right? And however it may look. So how it looks for me may look completely different for you, and that's okay.
Mhm.
It's having that courage to be different. It's having the courage to stand up and be authentic to your own needs. And and to feel that you deserve that. You're worthy of that, right?
My goodness, I have chills. I want to invite us and you to talk
Yeah.
about, so we covered the energy medicine, the plant medicine, and I would love to also wind in the power of the breath and, that full oxygenation of your body and the potency that comes from breath work, whether it's psychosomatic effects
Mhm.
or psychospiritual effects and all of
Mhm.
the above, because the breath is something that we all have access to. And in my opinion, it's actually a clue that we are innately worthy. If you have
Mhm.
access to the breath, that is
Mhm.
something that you can continuously remind yourself. If you're looking for that money, if you're looking for, those experiences and you're like, why is it not happening for me? You can bring yourself back to your breath for a
Mhm.
whole host of reasons. And I think it's also one of the channels that actually helps you to accomplish those other things that you're looking for in your life. And I would love to open up this conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree. So for me, breath was like the missing puzzle piece, right? So a lot of people who have autoimmune and chronic pain issues have had a lot of big T trauma in their childhood and in their lives, right? So, trauma is the response to a stressor. So, you and I could have had the same experience. You processed it the way your body is designed to process it. You did not create trauma pathway, right? I did not process it the way I was designed to process it. So, I created a trauma pathway. And when we have these trauma pathways, energy cannot flow. It creates stuck energy, which then leads to disease and imbalance in the system, right? And so we look at the world we have, it's a lot of chronic disease, a lot of chronic illness, right? So we all have these experiences, whether it was big T or little T trauma, that and you can't control like if a trauma is created. Like you don't get to choose. Your body chooses for you. Okay. It's not like, oh, let me choose this event to be traumatic. It doesn't happen that way, right? It's an unconscious reaction that the body does. So a lot of these reactions that we have in life are from the subconscious, right? So like only 5% of our thoughts are actually conscious thoughts. So the brilliant thing with breath is it allows you to enter that subconscious arena in a way that's a lot less intimidating than meditation. Because in breath, you can move. In breath, you can vocalize. In breath, you can shake. You can allow the body to process in whatever way it needs to process. The brilliant thing about breath is you get to do it the way that feels best for you. There's no one telling you it has to be you sit on the floor in silence, cross-legged, no thoughts, right? Like listening to whatever type of chanting music. That's not what it needs to be. It can look like there are people who do breath that I know that it's like dance parties and people do their breath that way, right? Or for me, like when I do breath, I bring in Mother Nature, right? So we'll pull an oracle card, we'll talk about where the moon is, we'll talk about what plants could support us at this time of year, right? So it's like it's a very different, it looks different for everybody. So it's finding that way that feels good for you. And so, we'll say like William Hoff, people know who he is. His breath pattern is very, very activating, actually is dangerous for people if you don't know what you're doing or if you've had a lot of trauma. It can be actually create more trauma. So when I was introduced to breath, it was with Kundalini yoga, which is a very stimulating type of yoga. It's very arduous. It's not a light practice. And so when I started embarking on trauma research 6 years ago, I realized I was actually causing trauma to my body by doing this type of breath because I was actually using it as a way to escape from my body. So I was still not being present in my body, trusting the body to do what it was designed to do. So the universe will give you signs of when you're still missing something, right? Like your inner knowing, you'll get that nudge like, hey, read this book. Hey, go to this class. Hey, contact this person, right? So if we're aware of it, we're paying attention, we know this is happening. So I kept getting these emails to do this training. And I was like, I cannot do another training. I've done so many trainings. I can't do it. I'm done. And it was like, you're gonna do this training. Nope, not doing it, not signing up for it, not doing it. And the universe kept sending it to me, you're going to do this training. And I was like, fine, just stop sending me the emails, right? Like, I'll sign up for the training. So I signed up for it. And a lot of it, what was taught is I knew I had already learned through my own trauma research, right? I'd done 5 years of research before that. However, it was the first time I felt safe to be in my physical body in 37, 38 years. Like, that's huge, right?
Mm.
So it landed differently. So when you're learning it just in your head, I call it like manic healing, right? You're reading all the books, you're listening to the podcast, you're going to the webinars, you're doing the trainings, you're doing it all in your head. There's still that disconnect between the mind, the body, and the spirit. So this training, it forced me to be in the body. It forced me to connect the mind, the body, and the spirit together. And it was amazing. Like, I don't have words for it because I literally was speechless. Like, this is what it feels like to be in my body. This is what it feels like to not have anxiety 24/7. Because, again, in our society, we're not taught to feel our feelings, right? We're not
Mhm.
taught to feel our sensations. We're taught to push them down. We're taught to numb them. We're taught to dissociate from them. So when you actually have a practice where you're in your body and you're trusting the body to move through what it needs to move through in order to heal and transmute and process it, it moves a lot faster than you think it's going to. So, you're sitting with, okay, anger came up. I'm identifying this was anger, right? I'm feeling it. Maybe I'm gonna punch the couch. I'm gonna punch my pillow, right? But I'm gonna keep breathing. I'm gonna keep up the breath. And so because I'm still keeping up the breath and I'm still in my body, the body can process that anger. It doesn't create a trauma pathway. It doesn't create a stuck emotion. It's not something I'm going to have to deal with in 15 years, right? Because I'm feeling it at that time that it's coming up. Whether it was repressed or it was current, it doesn't make a difference. So the great thing about breathwork is there's no agenda. We don't
Mhm.
have to talk about our problems. It's not talk therapy. Like, we don't have to retell our story 75 times and get re-traumatized each time, right? It's going into it, just trusting the body that the body knows what to do. And so for myself and for the people I work with, it's a great way to reconnect to your body, like you said, in a way that you always have available to you. It's free. It's always there. And you can do it on your own, right? You could just do a simple breath through the nose, out through the mouth. Do not do an activating breath unless you feel supported. I do not advise that, right? In my own practice, I don't actually do activating breath. If I do it, it's for 30 seconds at a time,
Mhm.
60 seconds at a time, right? Same thing with clients. I'm always watching them for reaction. That's part of being trauma informed. Safety is paramount.
Mhm.
Safety is the first concern I always have.
Mm. I'm loving this conversation so much. I'm giggling just because there's a levity to your energy that I feel helps the information land quite well. So to the listeners, if you're not watching us visually, the giggles are for good reason. It's because Amy has kick-ass energy and I am
Thank you.
living for it. Yes, all the yes. I remember, so I lived a huge part of my life disassociated from my body and only in my mind, like to the point that I could only feel up until about my
Hmm.
collarbone. And I didn't know this about myself until so I went to law school and then did my like articling and all of those requirements and everything was complete and there was this spaciousness between the completion of the certification, all the requirements, and getting called to the bar to become a certified lawyer. And I remember I took myself somewhere and I realized that I could not feel. And I was like, oh my goodness. And the instinct of this was coming to fruition, a few months before this, but I sort of just noticed it and pushed it aside until this pivotal moment in my experience where I realized I I can't feel my pleasure.
Hmm.
Everything is just fact. Like,
Hmm.
that's a pretty house. If it's a house is pretty, you should feel electricity or should. There's no shoulds, but it would be nice to have the full vibrant color, full spectrum of feeling the electricity of that moment of seeing something beautiful emanate throughout your entire being, which is now my experience. And the
Hmm.
contrast is wild. And so I really appreciate you articulating this subject so wonderfully well. And it's so engaging. So thank you for that. I was wondering if you would be willing to share with our audience a very easy beginner breathwork pattern that they could employ just to start to dip their toe into the process of breathwork and not being too
Yeah.
activated.
Absolutely. I'm gonna read a quote first so that people understand why breath work is so powerful. So it's from Light is the New Black by Rebecca Campbell. So it's your soul has all the answers. The only way to hear them is to go within.
Mm.
And that's what breath does. So I just want to validate you that most people do feel only from the neck up. Like that is the majority of our society. I mean, for years I was numb from the neck down as well. And so because we're logic is and rational thought is all that is really emphasized, right? Feeling is a weak. Feeling is not to be had. And so if we can unlearn that that's wrong, then we can be open to what could be different because different isn't bad. It's just what is, right? And that awareness. So the breath that I use with all of my clients and I use in my own practice is just it's you can alter it, right? For any way that feels good for you. So it's just in through the nose and out through the mouth. But on the exhale, you could sigh.
Mm.
You could make you could hum. So any sort of verbalization will help the energy move. So if things start to feel a little chaotic or they start to feel a little ungrounded, a little uncertain, you could move your body. You can make a noise. Yeah, you can. I like to rock. You could shake. Whatever feels good, the body will let you know what it wants you to do. It will
Mm.
tell you like that feels good, that doesn't, right? Like it will let you know. It's so again, it's this another level of connecting back to the body.
Mm.
What feels good to my body? Because we don't know a lot of the time. What we think feels good, the body's like, hell no, that doesn't feel good to me. And you'll get the pit in your stomach. You might get a headache. You might have some joint pain. You might feel numbness, right? The invitation is anything that happens in breath work is normal. Literally. Anything that can happen in breath work is normal. You can laugh, you can cry, you can be angry, you can feel sexually stimulated. Like there are so many different things because what's happening is you're bringing energy back into the system. So you're turning everything back on, right? So it's like when you turn your computer off, it's a black screen. That's how we all walk around the world, really, is like we're turned off. So when you connect back to your body, you're turning everything back on. Your senses are becoming more acute. You might be more vigilant of what's going on around you. You might tap into those sixth sense, right? So that's what happened for me. Like I was able to channel. I'm like, what is going on? Whose voice is that? Like, how do I know that? Right. And so all of these different things that thousands of years ago we had ritual around, we had teaching around, there was
Mm.
community around it. None of that happens anymore. So when it happens, we're like, oh my God, we did something wrong. What is happening? This isn't right. This isn't, it's scary. But the best thing about breath is that like I said, you always have it available to you. It's free. You don't have to go anywhere to do it. So you can just take those 5 deep breaths, right? And if you feel called to, you could do a sigh breath on the exhale. You could do a hiss, right? You can just do a voo. That's a big thing in the somatic healing is the voo. So any sort of noise like that also stimulates the vagus nerve. So you're letting the body know like, hey, you don't need to freak out right now. I'm online. I'm connected to you. We can heal. This can be a healing space. We don't have to be hyper vigilant. We don't have to be stressed out. There is no threat. So when we do the breath, we bring healing to the body and we let the body know that we're trusting the process because we don't have an agenda, right? We're not going into it like age 5 when this happened. No, it doesn't happen like that. The body knows what's safe to be moved. The body knows what's safe to be processed. And so you could dance with it, right? You can move, put on a playlist that you like. I always have an intention when I do a session with people, and it's usually an intention if they say, listen, this is something that is bothering me, right? But I always, whenever I do a breath with someone I've never met before, the first session is always about release because we hold on to things that are not our own, especially if we're empathic or highly sensitive, right? We pick up on other people's stuff and we carry it. So we carry this backpack of burdens of stuff that is not ours, and we keep carrying it forever
Put
until
it
someone goes,
down.
right? Someone goes, you could put it down, right? You're like, oh, novel concept. I could put this down. What? I didn't know this wasn't mine. And that's the thing. A lot of times we don't even know it's not ours. So in breath, when I open up with somebody, I affirm with them because they're able to I find that a lot of people who even can't meditate, right? Like I was that person who couldn't meditate, right? I thought there was something wrong with me. But a lot of people who have big T trauma, the body thinks it's not safe to meditate. So the body's role is to keep you safe. It's survival, right? It's also to heal, but it's predominantly to keep you safe. So if there's an activity that you're trying to do that it deems not safe, it's not going to let you do it. So you think there's something wrong with you. No, it's your body protecting you because it thinks it's not safe. And it knows you don't have the skills yet to handle that situation, to process it, right? But when we continue to show up and show the body that we're ready, to show the body that we trust the intelligence, that's when the magic happens.
Mm.
And it comes very quickly. It's not like oh, I have to do this for 3 years, right? Like it's not like that. Because you've been breathing since birth. You can make a longer exhale than your inhale. Again, that signifies to the body that you're safe. There's no threat. You can also throw in a top hold, right? So that would be taking an inhale, holding the breath at the top. That can feel kind of chaotic, but it can also be energizing. So if that feels good, again, permission to do what feels good for you. You could do a hold at the bottom, which can be grounding. But it can also feel like, oh my God, I don't have any air left, right? So again, there's always this duality, but it's not a bad thing. It's just is. This is just is. It's practicing the awareness of what is coming up and just being with it without judgment, without expectation, just trusting that the body knows what it needs to do.
Mm. Wow, that was so incredibly helpful and insightful. And I love that the breakdown of the options, you gave an entire catalog of options to play with, are simple. And it really is
Yeah.
that the simplest things are
Mhm.
typically the most helpful, and also the ones that we typically throw away because we think it's too simple. Can it really be this easy? Yes, but the healing process is hard and
Yes.
can, unfold continuously and should
Right.
unfold continuously because that's
Yes.
part of the journey.
Right.
And yet the tools in the tool belt are notoriously simple. And I think that
Yes.
that's a really cool
And there's so
contrast.
many of them, right? Like breath is just one aspect. It's a big aspect that I include into my practice because for me it was so transformational and it allows people to be in a space that they can feel with the wisdom of their body.
Mm,
And then it allows for that curiosity of, oh, what else could happen, right? Like maybe I'll be receptive to changing my diet. Maybe I'll be receptive now after I've had breath to trying homeopathy. Maybe I'll be receptive to turning off my Wi-Fi router, right? So it opens up this whole new idea of change is not so bad, right? Change is the only constant. It doesn't mean it's bad. And the idea, again, of taking the small steps that are best for you. You get to choose what's best for you. So, hey, maybe I'll choose to stay with Western medicine, but I'm also going to try this breath, or I'm also going to try to forage, or I'm also going to try to eliminate toxins, right? So it's taking the steps that feel good for you. I'm never going to tell somebody you have to do it my way, but I'm going to suggest all of the options that you can have.
mhm. I think that's the most beautiful way to navigate life, right? And there's so many voices. I know I have an episode about this on the podcast where it's really that plug your own adventure because
Yes.
everyone, their mother and their dog are going to give you advice about
Yep.
something that you should do that worked for them. Lots of, if not all of that advice is going to be contradictory to one another. And
Mhm.
that's part of the infinite potentiality of the universe. There's
Mhm.
going to be these pathways, and some of them are not going to make sense. Some of them make sense at one point of your growth journey, and then it evolves into something else that contradicts what you used when it worked for you, right? And so it's a
Exactly.
matter of trusting and tuning in to where you are in your current experience and taking those steps forward, one choice at a time, and trying it all on authentically because it feels good to do so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's celebrating the small wins, right? So the small steps may feel really small, but they add up. And so when you can take the time to celebrate the small wins and see, right? So like if I were to look back 15 years ago, it's radically different. But
Mm.
if I were to look back a year ago, it doesn't look that different, right? But I started this business. I did all these things. And, if I don't really think about it, I take it for granted, right? So in our world, we're always that like, we want what's next. We want instant gratification. There is no small steps, it's just giant leaps. But
Mm.
that's overwhelming to the system. And because the system is designed to keep you safe, if you take a leap, it thinks you're dying. So it's like, oh, that's not happening. And it sabotages you, right? And you're like, what went on here? I don't understand. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. Right. So it's being mindful of, again, what is best for you in that time and space. Because as you
Mm.
said, it changes. It changes.
I'm so excited about this conversation. I just got an image come to mind about the frog in water. And if you turn up the heat, right? So that can go either of two ways. There's like the dichotomy of if the frog's in water and it's struggling and the heat is turned up, then it dies in the hot water that it didn't know was becoming hot. But also that gradual transformation of an environment changing is also, there's like, I'm holding both
Mhm.
at the same time right now. I don't
Mhm.
know if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It's all about progress, right? Not process or whatever that saying is. But like, it's all about not rushing the process and
Mm-hmm.
then just being with it is in that time and space. So we think more is always better, right? Oh, I'll do more. I'll take more plant medicine. No, that's not the answer. Believe me, I've tried. It doesn't work that way. Again, it's taking the small bites, the small steps, what feels attainable to you and not overwhelming, not
Mm.
paralyzing, right? And so another gift I've included for the listeners is an ebook on 5 quick steps to connect back to your intuition. And so we talked about some of them today, but there's a few more in there, right? And it's just that idea of these small practices that you can implement every day. They're not hard. They're simple. It's just making that choice
Mm-hmm.
to choose something different, right?
I love that. So we are coming to the end of our conversation together, and this feels like such a wonderful place to start wrapping up. I want to give you the opportunity to share a nugget of wisdom that comes to mind that you would like to end us off on.
Yeah, I mean, I shared a lot, so like I don't want to overwhelm the listener. I was like,
You
there's so
have it.
much that I could, there's
Just
so
at
much I could say.
the
I mean,
bow.
yeah, I think the most important to wrap up what we said, the most important nugget that I would share is rather than living in judgment and shame and expectations of what other people want you to do, to find whatever it takes to get you back connected to your body, right? Because
Mm,
that's where the wisdom lies. So maybe that's dancing, maybe that's breath, maybe that's yoga, maybe that's a person that brings you back, right? It's whatever that may be, because that wisdom that exists there for all of us will lead you to the next step
ooh,
and then the next step, right?
that is beautifully said. Yes, one step at a time, gradual curiosity, playfulness in this space, and allowing yourself to celebrate by looking back retroactively. Thank you so, so much for your presence, your wisdom, your guidance here today, Amy. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you at Collabradabra on Collabradabra. Um, yes, I will include, if you are interested in following along on Amy's journey or getting healing sessions or just asking all of the questions, I will make sure to include the gifts that she has to offer to you, as well as all of the social media links to follow along with her. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Eden.
much for being here. And thank you for listening to our listeners. It has been such a pleasure. Until next time.